Hi, this video is to show as quick as I can how to load a quilt if you're unfamiliar with loading a quilt. So we're going to get started really fast. So you have your backing, and I would recommend making sure that it is wider than your quilt top before you start loading. You don't want to get it loaded and started quilting and find out it's too small. Make sure your backing is square, and by square I mean there's a straight edge across the top and the bottom and preferably the sides. So you want to have a nice square backing, okay, and then face it downwards. Okay, you're going to face it down, and then you need to attach both ends to leaders. So these are your leaders, and you can see this is the way it's pulling off the rail there. And there's a pin line right there, okay? So whether you're pinning or whether you're using red snappers or leader grips, you have that straight line on your leaders to go by. So now we're going to go around to the other side. And then on the other end, you're going to be attaching that straight edge to your pin line there, okay? However you're going to choose to do that, okay? And it makes it easier if you have a mark on this side. I don't know that that's my center mark. Maybe that one is, but have a mark on this side that is exactly equal to the other side, and then you're able to mark the center of each end. So you can mark the center of each end and then line it up with the marks on that. And then probably it's going to be pretty close to being able to be rolled on so that it's smooth. So then once you get that once you get that pinned and roll it back and forth several times. And by that I mean, okay, so I'm going to roll this up now. Actually, I can't because I have those pins there. But you would literally roll it back and forth, and you would roll it so that you do a complete rolling and unrolling and rolling and unrolling until the backing is smooth and there's not any big gaps. And then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to put your batting down, okay? And it's nice if you have a straight edge on your backing, but you don't have to. But make sure that your batting is going to drape flat. You want it... When you have your batting hanging down, you want to see that it's laying straight down and not kind of wanting to lay at an angle, because you don't want to start getting down to the end and this start happening. That would be a terrible thing. So make sure your batting is nice and full, and you really want to have 4 inches at least extra on either side. So that's what's really nice. I have a lot on this one, so this is really nice. And then once you get that done, if you have a channel lock, you need to set it so that you can baste it across the top, okay? If you don't have a channel lock, this is what some of the people have suggested who don't. So you would advance your quilt, okay? So advance it so that your needle is at least just over the edge. What you're trying to do is you want about 1/8 of an inch. You don't want it past 1/4 of an inch, or you'll have to take those stitches out. But if you don't have a channel lock, then let this neck part of your machine hit up against this take-up rail, and then have your machine set on the lowest stitch with this. It's a 4, and then just keep your machine pushed up against there and stitch that down, okay? So once you have your, and I've already done this, so once you have that done, I'm gonna undo it a little bit because I have it a little farther than I want it to be. Okay, so once you've got that nice straight line across, whether you used your channel lock or whether you were able to do this, and then you're going to take your top and you're going to lay it right at that stitch line, okay? You're going to lay it right there. And so something I do, because I just don't, I can't stand for something like that to happen. And it just seems like I'm all the time letting that happen if I don't do something. So that's why I have these pins. These pins are from my sit-down quilting days. And they're just quick and easy to slide in, slide out. I don't fasten them. And so, again, I will use my channel lock. But if I didn't have a channel lock, I would probably just advance this take-up rail so that when I did this, my needle was right over where I wanted that 1/8 inch seam line to be. So since I haven't done that, I'm going to do that really quick, and then I will show you what else I do. Okay, I'm back, and I want to show you something I should not have done. I actually should not have unadvanced and advanced back this quilt, because when I went to base this, I saw it was 1/8 of an inch off in different spots, and I want this really exact. So I had to redo my stitch there. I had to redo the original stitch and then line this up. So that's just a little tip of what not to do. Don't be like me. So I've restitched and redone, so we've got that. And now I'm ready to baste up the sides. Before you do that, though, if you're floating, which means this is going loose, if you weren't going to float it, then you would tuck this behind this bar, and I don't have the leader attached, but this end would be attached to the leader on this bar if you weren't going to float, but I'm floating. So before you start basting on the sides, just lift this up and make sure that your batting is nice and smooth under there and nothing's happened. And then go ahead and on the ends, have everything hanging straight. Don't be doing like that, because it can pull and tug. So don't do that. So go ahead and have your ends, both of them. You want them hanging nice and straight down, so there's not any bad pull there. Okay, and then you want this to be straight. So I have a unique little system I created with I tied a ribbon down here. It's cheap ribbon. And so I've just taken a washable Crayola marker and I've made marks. As I advance the quilt, I want to make sure all those are lined up. So I've got those. And then down here on the end, I have a ring magnet tied, and I know exactly where I want it to go each time I clip it there. I want the top of that magnet there, or I could have flipped it on underneath. That might have been smarter. Okay, so now I want to know that these edges are nice and straight, but border edges aren't always good and straight. So sometimes it's better if you've got a border and a little bit of an inner seam to go by. So I'm going to walk around to the back. And here's what I'm going to do to make sure. I'm just going to show one side, but do it to both sides. So I'm going to put my foot where the edge is right there by that border, that seam, and I'm going to clamp down my vertical channel lock. And so I'm going to move this down and just make sure. Okay, so it stayed nice and lined up, so I know that I have it loaded straight, and I could either do my channel lock to baste up or not, but I do baste up, okay? I baste away from me, so make sure you do that. And another thing I like to do before I baste is I use clamps across the front. If you don't have clamps to use, you could even do something like what you saw me do with this. You could just do a whole row of these across the front. And I would rather do this than run a basting stitch. Some people will run a basting stitch, but to me this is just faster and easier, because then when you're done you can just do that, or you could leave them laying here as you advance it and redo them. So that's just another little tip of a way to just keep these layers even and smooth. And then on the ends, I have these clamps here. And so I'm going to show you what it is. I get asked this a lot. This was from Mondo Clips from Amazon. It's the top part. The rod part's real flimsy, so that part doesn't work. But this is that top part. And this is a set of cafe rods from Walmart. And it has these little loops on the end so I can tie ribbon to. And they slide, so I taped it for the length that I would need. And then I cut a little piece of batting strip because otherwise this isn't fat enough. So if I were over there, it would hold just fine. So so I have that, and then give this a little bit of tension. And then I have a dowel rod. Some people use yardsticks. Some people use something they found in the garage. But without it, it has a little bit of weight down. So so if I do this, then it just kind of lifts that up and keeps the weight of this clamp from pulling down. And if you have one of the older idler rails, then it's pretty nice. You have a little divot here that you can just store it in. So I like that. And then another thing I do is those same washable Crayola markers. This is the zero centering tape measure. I got it from a quilt shop that's long since gone out of business, but you can buy them everywhere. Just look for zero center tape measure. And I just put a mark there that's going to line up with this edge. And it again is that washable Crayola marker. So when I'm done with this quilt, I'll just take a scrap piece of batting and mist it with water, and I'll wait till the quilt is off. I wouldn't want anything to drop down on it, but just a tiny bit of batting misted with water takes that off, and it takes that off. So at this point, I am ready to go into QCT and decide what I'm gonna quilt and all. And then as I advance my quilt, then I'll do the same thing all over again. I want to go ahead and get everything straight and clamp down before I do this, because at that point I want to be able to check and know, do I still have it straight? So I'll try to do this, and I'll use this to make sure, and then I'll clamp down, and then I'll just make sure, and then because by the time I start my stitching, I want everything in place because I don't want anything changing. So I hope that you have found this video helpful and quick in how to load a quilt.